and begin the top four, stage 4 of the Nerd Rage 2023 Championship. Jonathan Hobbs is the higher seed, and so on the play. So then we can probably assume that this is the format he wanted to go. He valued going first in the most because he did have the choice here, and on the board with turn 1 Ragavan.
And I think that does kind of make sense. If you look at the other matchups, we have Rakdos and Pioneer against Raja on Blue White Control and Pioneer. And then standard, we have Esper against Golgari. So, I mean, I think you could maybe argue that the standard matchup is close in terms of which one you'd rather be on the play. But as far as the Grief, not dead after all, Ragavan deck versus realistically, the only good removal spell that Raja has access to on turn 1 is Prismatic Ending, because you don't really want to be firing off 2 cards to pitch to kill a Ragavan on turn 1. That's not a spot where you super want to be. So I think that does make sense here for Hobbs.
Okay, Ragavan comes across, and Raja is going to fire off a Solitude. Does not want Ragavan to flip off something like the Fairy Time Reveler on the second turn and just, dramatically reduce his chances the rest of the game. So he's going to 2-for-1 himself. He did have Prismatic Ending, so just no untapped white source maybe.
Yeah, that's kind of tough. Raja, a bunch of fetch lands and shock lands. And, I did mention you don't want to Solitude the Ragavan, but you also don't want to get hit by that thing. You kind of have to. So there's a follow-up Dothy Voidwalker here for Raja. That one's pretty good. Be able to, like I said, if Raja has something like a counterspell for Jonathan's 3-drop, then that counterspell going under the Voidwalker could be very, very relevant in future turns.
All right, so Raja will contemplate his land drop here, which is tricky. I mean, there's a lot of these 4-color decks with Triomes, fetch lands. I mean, it takes some initial practice to figure out how you want to sequence these things, what turns you need domain, what mana you need available, and it's going to be Breeding Pool. So Binding will now cost 2 if that's on tap.
You might be lining up like something like a second Prismatic Ending here. That's why he was okay pitching the first one. And we do see that Prismatic Ending there. So, and as we mentioned, that Magus on the Moon, the Solitude's gone. If Jonathan has the 1 Magus, this game might just be as close to over. We have a 3-drop, but it's Fable. No Magus.
Okay. All right. Well, Fable's still a strong card, but maybe not ideal at this point for Hobbs. And no Grief Scam action so far.
Yeah, you could probably breathe a sigh of relief for Raja there. You see Johnny tap 3 mana. It's like, oh no, is the game over? But able to dodge a bullet there.
But it's just a one-of, so yeah, absolutely. And Fable, obviously, good at creating a board presence, good at cleaning up the hand, especially in game 1. You haven't been able to sideboard out the cards you don't want. Jonathan can easily have removal. He's less than ideal here, so he can fix that up on his next draw step if allowed to.
Yeah, and Raja's just under the gun immediately. You see even something like Teferi. Teferi can help clean up the Goblin Shaman token, but you still have that Fable to have to answer. And looks like we're lining up a Binding on the Fable. That will stop Jonathan's loot productions, not able to kind of filter through some cards, but can just cleanly attack in with the Shaman token, get another mana source, potentially hardcast a Grief this turn. Could even see maybe something like a double spell where you go Thoughtseize into another 3-drop. Just a lot of options here for Jonathan.
Yeah, it looks like there are some land. There is a Grief in hand for Jonathan, so hard casting that here. A potential line here that's always appealing, getting that on the board. And obviously there are options, so Jonathan's thinking about this.
Yeah, I couldn't quite get a good look at the hand. I think it might have been a Taka Numa in there as well. And here is the 1 ring, but there's actually the 2 rings. And this Raja's hand being all banger 4-drops. This is not exactly the hand you wanted to see when you cast this Grief, huh?
Yeah, although there's not a 4th land. So Jonathan, I mean, as much as everything in Magic, tends to end up mattering, this choice doesn't feel like it matters all that much. Eats Omnath or a copy of the ring, but really we're waiting to see if Raja can draw a land here.
Yeah, my guess is probably the Omnath, just because the life gain from Omnath can sort of help offset those rings, and there's 2 rings anyways. So you figure if worst case scenario for Jonathan, if Raja does find a land you don't want to give him the option of playing those 4-drops, because he's likely going to go for ring first, and you still have to contend with there it is. There's the land for Raja. We certainly have a game now.
Yeah, we do have a game indeed, and maybe even is Raja just ahead now as there's 5 power on the board, not going to do much. I guess we still get a treasure. And what is our follow-up for Jonathan? It's okay. I mean, given that you can't interact with your opponent, Takanuma is not the worst thing to be doing.
Yep. So Takanuma, Jonathan doing this main phase because he wants to be able to hit a Voidwalker and replay it. Did hit the
Mhm.
Voidwalker and is going to replay it. Now, one thing worth noting, there are. If we take a look at Raj's deck list here, how many verdicts? We got 2 main deck verdicts, so that is something playing towards. Although notably, Island of Minamo breeding pool, so no second white yet for Raja, so that could be an issue.
It could be. We'll see. One ring tends to fix a lot of problems. There's 2 more cards incoming here. And Raja with lots of life to play with. There
And White
is,
Source, White
yeah.
Source acquired. So if we have the verdict, that's a nice little easy cleanup here for Raja. And yeah, only 2 lands under the Voidwalker right now, so nothing too crazy from that. But even if at the very least we know that Raja has a second ring. Now, something that you again, as we mentioned earlier, is that Voidwalker is kind of making things a little tricky. Where
Mhm.
Raja would normally, if the rest of his hand was bricked, he would want to just go second ring and then get that. But yeah, here's the verdict. That's a massive, massive swing here for Raja.
Yeah, ouch. All right. This is okay. There's not after all. That's something for Jonathan. Saving the actually, there's a choice here between Voidwalker and Grief, I suppose.
Yeah, you notice I actually saw he pointed to the Voidwalker and then kind of thought for a second. So
Mhm.
maybe interested in potentially saving the grief, but I think I kind of like saving the Voidwalker here because again the with Raja being able to deploy the second ring next turn, you can okay. Well, he's going to go for the grief, which actually does get the other ring.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, Raja picked up 2 other pretty good ones.
Yeah, this is rough. So Solitude, I mean, almost forced to take Solitude, leaving your opponent with an extra ring. That sucks, but Jonathan's working with what he's got here. So able to put a solid hit on Raja here, and then the ring is starting to tick down. Jonathan's still in this game, but it looks pretty scary.
Yeah, so Raja's going to fall to 7 this turn, likely going to activate. You could even see something like activate the ring, draw 3, Manamo untap the ring, pick up 4 more, play land 6, and deploy the second ring to kind of reset them. And that's, Joe, I don't know if you've ever drawn 7 cards in a single turn, but usually the game ends when that happens.
It's pretty good. We did see, I think, Raja draw 10 in a turn yesterday and lose, but that's obviously super desperation time. But yeah, this is so strong. Minamo kind of just thrown in these stacks. I mean, there really wasn't seeing a lot of play in the format, I don't believe, until the One Ring printed. And now it's just, oh, casual extra activation. And yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, just like really, really helps you kind of go over the top when you're. There's always those spots where you kind of you untap with the ring and you're like, okay, I can draw 2 cards and maybe find something good. But when you turn 2 into 5, it just becomes
Mhm,
so much more powerful. Russia lining up 4 mana, so maybe not going for the Manamo untap. Okay, now we're lining up 2. Let's see what we go for here. Interested to see if he's maybe thinking about untapping that ring. Because if we're lining up 2 blue, there's not a ton else that would be, right? Like
right.
Preordain, 1 mana, Lorien, all those are 1 mana. So I think we might be thinking about untapping the ring here.
Yeah, and that's what it's going to be. That's too much to give up. And okay, Jonathan, waiting in the wings. Wow,
Wow,
really nice.
interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, the patience from Jonathan. I mean, we knew about the subtlety, so
Mhm,
it kind of does make sense because if he goes for the Bowmaster immediately, it's just going to get subtletied. So maybe waiting for Raja to get a little bit greedier,
mhm,
and is going to put that Bowmaster on top. That would have been a massive swing if Raja maybe didn't find a blue card there.
mhm.
But did able to untap the ring, and then we'll see if we. I assume we found land 4. It'd be pretty hard not to after drawing 7 cards
Yeah.
to deploy that second ring because with the ring on 4, that's where it gets a little dicey, right? With Raj on 7, take 4, go to 3, and that the chip damage really adds up at that point.
Mhm. Instead, we're going to see a Misty Rainforest here, probably looking for a basic. Yes, indeed. So say it's 6. Replace the ring, and well, it's going to be tough for Jonathan Hobbs to close here. Raja with a full hand and Jonathan on empty, drawing Bowmaster.
And Jonathan wisely going to cast this Bowmaster main phase while Raj is tapped out, so no counter spell available.
Mhm.
And we've already gone through 2 solitudes, so may not be able to answer it at instant speed, but does still have a couple of prismatic endings left over in the ley line bindings as well.
All right, Roger will need something here, but you notice he didn't. He chose not to reactivate the fresh ring, so it doesn't get that extra clock started himself, and honestly, probably has plenty of cards to work with as it is.
Yeah, looks like Raja cracking a Flooded Strand here, thinking about what land to get. I do see another Solitude in Raja's hand. Can't quite get a glimpse of what the rest of the contents are, but I know there's at least a Solitude. And yeah, looks like Raja's lining up a couple of mana here, maybe a Prismatic Ending. Yep, Prismatic Ending on the Bowmaster, so that'll unlock maybe a ring activation here if Raja so chooses. And worth noting, Raja does not want to fire off that ring.
All right, Thoughtseize leads to Solitude wipes out Grief, and now Jonathan with a 1/1 army, not even able to attack through Solitude. Looks pretty grim here. Raja's hand, Jonathan's like, all right, I've seen enough.
Well, there you go. That's going to be Raja winning game number 1 over Jonathan Hobbs. Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much exactly what we would have expected, right? Just like Jonathan was able to kind of set up that grief where we were able to grief one of the payoffs, but unfortunately for Jonathan at that time, there was just too many 4-drops and wasn't able to kind of take them all, and then eventually lost to one of the resolved 4-drops.
Right. It really came down to Raja needing untapped land off the top on turn 4, and it was there, which, I mean, there's a lot of land in these decks. Odds may have been in his favor, but for Jonathan's perspective, that was unfortunate. Okay, so game 1 of Modern in the books. Let's go ahead and bring the deck list back up. We can talk through sideboarding, see how things change. But for Jonathan Hobbs, presumably having the choice, this being the format he chose, he wanted to go on the play game 1 and taking the loss there. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a situation where maybe Jonathan didn't like the matchup as much, and he figured his best chance was to kind of maybe steal a game where he was in the play with the Grief Not Dead after all. As far as sideboards are concerned, I like this Magus of the Moon. That one seems pretty okay, along with this other copy of Blood Moon. I think those are kind of slam dunks. The Pithing Needle to help stop the One Ring. Those 3 probably coming in along with the Shieldred. Past those 4, I don't think you really want to go towards Engineered Explosives. No really targets there. You could maybe consider Kolaghan's Command, but the issue there is a lot of Raja's removal spells exile, so you're not getting a ton back off K Command.
Right. It's basically a Verdict, and there's not a full set of those. There's also, I mean, is it possible you bring in Bone Crusher to turn off damage prevention from the ring, or are you really just playing that against the decks with cheaper creatures? I don't really know why that's in the deck, but it is versatile, so maybe we see it.
No, that's actually a good point. Yeah, Bone Crusher. I always forget that random line of text on it, the damage prevention. But yeah, if your opponent rings and you Bone Crusher either yourself or one of your creatures, because obviously you can't target them, then the damage prevention from the ring would go away for that turn. So that's a good call. That one probably will come in just because it's one of Jonathan. Like if a ring hits the table and Raja's at anything above 7 or 8 life, it feels really hard to kind of lose that game from there. And Bone Crusher is a way to steal a game if that happens.
All right, let's go ahead and look at Raja's deck list. Control, experienced mage. In fact, brought control in multiple formats this weekend. We see the modern version here. We saw him play yesterday in some pretty lengthy blue-white mirrors. Not the case here, but certainly lots of tools, although we're going to see the other part of the sideboard here. Stern Scoldings, kind of when it was printed, seemed like kind of at least to me, kind of an awkward card. Like, what is this really good against? But pretty strong here, I would think.
Really, really good in this matchup. If you look at Jonathan's creatures, you got Ragavan, Orcish Bowmasters, Dothy Voidwalker, and even something all the way up the curve to Grief, able to answer every single one of those for 1 mana. So those are probably slam dunks. The Veil of Summer is really good against Thoughtseize and Grief, so those ones probably going to come in here. Additional counter spells, you could maybe consider these Dovin's Vetoes. There's primary targets like Fable the Mirror Breaker and the 1 Blood Moon, but it's not a ton of stuff past that, so maybe you don't want those. Dress Down, Force Negation, I don't think those are what these matchups are for. So the Veils, the Scolding's probably good. Maybe a copy of Veto, maybe not. But past that, I think that's really all Raj is looking for.
Yeah, okay. And there's definitely some easy cuts here. I don't think Chalice of the Voids are sticking in to go get put on 1, especially going second. That seems unlikely. So I'm sure he can figure out the rest of his cuts. I'm sure he knows them without even thinking about it. Counterspells going second is maybe a little mediocre, but we could still see it potentially.
I kind of don't hate the counter spells even going second because
Yeah.
Jonathan is bringing in more 3-drops. We talked
Yeah.
about the Magus and the Blood Moon, still has the Fables in. So, it's a little bit awkward against like the turn 1 grief draws because they see the counter spell, they can play around it, maybe they don't even need to take it. But yeah, against those 3-drops, I think it is worth it. And the Shield Rit too. So we want to consider that.
All right, so we're getting ready for game 2 of Modern here. Jonathan is presenting. Raja is just about to do the same, so we'll go back to the table. Thanks for being with us here. I know there's options on what you could be doing, including the last week of the NFL season, but you're here joining us. We appreciate that.
Speaking of NFL, I got a parlay action. I don't want to I don't want to spoil it too much, but we got a parlay. Anyways, we don't need to talk about that.
We can talk about that on the breaks. I'm curious.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna have Jonathan on the play here against Raja. Now a lot of what people associate this Rakdos deck with the turn 1 grief not dead after all. Jonathan did not have that in game number 1, but we will have to see. I see a grief. I don't know if I see the not dead after all. A couple of Ragavans, I think, as well in Jonathan's hand, but not entirely sure if there is that not dead. We are going to keep it, and we start off with a Blood Crypt and a Ragavan. And now last game, Raja had to answer this with a Solitude, and yet here we have the Prismatic ending, so don't have to 2-for-1 ourselves this time.
But here we have the backup, like you said. So it's going to be. Oh, and there is a rebirth in hand. So no dash here. Jonathan wants to stay on the board.
And I think I did see a grief in Jonathan's hand. So with that the grief and the rebirth, I wonder if there's maybe just no additional black cards. That could certainly be a possibility. Because like I said, I'm pretty sure I definitely saw the grief in hand. So we have another Prismatic ending to answer the second Ragavan and see if Jonathan can find that black card. Yeah, there's definitely a grief in there for sure.
Okay, so options then would be, I mean, there may be 3-drops. Like, okay, so maybe there's not a black card like you're saying. Maybe there's just a 3-drop Jonathan prefers. Okay, Voidwalker's gonna, and Voidwalker into grief is a great combination. So obviously black cards are limited here. And Jonathan will hope this doesn't get Stern Scolding.
Yeah, that would be the worst case scenario, or even subtlety. I mean, but Jonathan's leftover, I think Jonathan's leftovers are land plus Malakir rebirth. So if this gets subtlety, and here is the subtlety. He kind of has to put that on bottom. I guess you could draw it and then hardcast it next turn, but is that really where you want to be? So tough decision here for Jonathan.
Yeah, it may be difficult. I don't know if you have the ability to hardcast on next turn. I think that's probably what you go with. It still stops Raja's turn 4 One Rings if there's something like that in hand or Omnath. And if you bottom this and you're stuck and you have Malakir Rebirth, like what are you hoping to draw really?
Yeah, I guess.
He seems unsure of himself, but he's going to keep it.
He is going to keep it. I'm trying to think of cards that would potentially be better than Grief here, like maybe Fable the Mirror Breaker, maybe one of the Moon Effects, and Raja looks like we're passing without a land drop here. So I guess the nice thing about topping it is you can kind of choose whether you want to keep it based on what Raja does. He's with that Bloodstained Mire in place, so kind of keeping the option open. And we see Jonathan thinking about fetching away this Grief here. He's not sure of himself.
That does make the decision easier. It's good that you pointed that out, having the fetch line to be able to decide later. And now, it's interesting that what Jonathan's he's going to get rid of it. Wow. I don't know for sure what Jonathan's cards are, but if you're right, this land rebirth, I'm going to say I'm surprised.
Yeah, I know for sure I saw rebirth. I couldn't quite tell. Jonathan's got a lot of alt art, so it's kind of hard to see. What I want to see is shuffle away the grief. Raja cuts, shuffles, and then Jonathan just draws the grief anyways.
Sure. So maybe there's potential there's not an untapped land in Jonathan's hand, because that would be certainly a reason to pitch it, but he might have bought it in the first place then. Let's find out.
Let's see. Potentially looking, like you said, for one of those 3-drops. Fable the Mirror Breaker, Blood Moon, Magus, all pretty good here. Dothy, pretty good here. There's a Polluted Delta. Yeah, not entirely sure if that was in the hand prior or if that was the draw step.
Okay, Raja misses again.
And let's see what kind of follow up here that Jonathan may or may not have. Okay, there's a Dothy that might be running into a counter spell. Roger says okay.
All right, that's got to be at least a sigh of relief for Hobbs a little bit. Well, it's going to get vaporized immediately. And now we can see the rest of the hand. It's Lightning Bolt and Malakir Rebirth. So Hobbs looking for board presence here.
And that Malakir Rebirth, not the greatest against these prismatic endings and solitudes.
Mm-hmm.
Really wanted to line up that Rebirth with the Grief, but yeah, that subtlety might be the difference this game. That was the really backbreaking subtlety. Like, you can imagine if that subtlety was, say, a counterspell when Raja only had 1 mana up and that Grief resolved, and the Not Dead After All also resolved, or the Malakir Rebirth rather, excuse me. This is a much different game because Prismatic Ending can't go after the Grief. There may not be a Solitude, or you could have even taken the Solitude with the Grief. So yeah, this is this game could have been a lot worse if Raja did not have that subtlety. Now, Rasha's still missing some land drops, so there is, a little bit of hope for Hobbs fans out there, but it really needs to find a threat because all Raja really wants is time, right? Raja's advantage in the long game.
He certainly is, and Hobbs just needs anything, and I can't find it. Raja with the Hallowed Fountain tapped last turn, debated whether to shock that in or not, decided to save the life. All right, 2 draws in a row. Although, 2 colors short here, so Omnath uncastable at the moment, but I'm sure Raja will accept that bargain for being able to actually have 4 land.
This is the true Azorius deck. Raja actually sideboarded into Azorius. Maybe he cut all the Omnaths.
Now has found a counter spell, so boom. Oh, I'm sorry. So thought that he's not going to resolve.
There's a Raveler.
Yeah.
Can maybe cash it in for an extra card immediately. Maybe can go upstairs. Cashing it in for a card immediately could be a little awkward if Hobbs does find a Bowmaster, because that can kind of cleanly answer it. But Raja maybe wants to find a little bit more gas. Does end up drawing a card here, and we'll have to see what Hobbs can find. We know about the Bulb. We know about the Rebirth.
Found the Magus of the Moon, but honestly, it's not even going to make Leyline Binding more expensive. That's unusual.
yeah, because we actually have 3 colors.
It makes it cheaper because Raja picks up a mountain. Nothing working exactly according to plan here for Jonathan Hobbs in game 2, or even in the whole match. But we'll see if he can manage to fight through that.
Okay, we're going to start with a Bolt on Teferi, really respecting that, and then see if the Magus as the follow-up. Just thinking about it. What does Jonathan want to do here? I think there's a Not Dead and a Rebirth in hand now too. Those are not looking super hot here.
All right, so there's a land, there's a Magus, able to protect it from a Supreme Verdict, which Raja can't currently cast, but you may as well give yourself the opportunity. And
as you mentioned, this Magus of the Moon making the Leyline Binding cost less mana. That's pretty funny.
You're sitting in Jonathan Hobbs' chair right now. You know you're in trouble. You know you're behind. You're just hoping. Maybe my opponent is stuck. Maybe they don't have whatever they need. There's Teferi to pick the Magus up. I don't even know if that's necessarily better than it getting Leyline Binding, because Raja picks up a card.
Also pretty funny that the Magus of the Moon just saved Raja 2 life, able to sneak the Breeding Pool in, then play the Teferi and still have counterspell available. So nothing really going according to plan here for Hobbs.
Raja just styling on him at this point. Okay, that was a confident casting of another Magus of the Moon. Jonathan Hobbs, okay, throw this back on the board, do your worst, which is probably going to be pretty bad.
It's not even clear that Raja cares that much about this.
I know.
He's got an island in play. He's got a active Teferi in play, can still binding it. You could even see like a cheeky play where maybe Jonathan draws a good card, goes to cast it. Raja says, okay, response, binding your Magus, then have counterspell available, kind of like to mask it a little bit.
Sure.
Raja definitely in the driver's seat. Last game we was kind of decided by the One Ring. Doesn't quite have that, but doesn't necessarily need it. We're just ahead on a lot of different metrics here.
Hobbs knows what's up as Raja figures out how he wants to tap, but this is the binding that you mentioned, and Hobbs kind of shuffling the cards back and forth in his hands, like, yeah, none of these are all that great. Okay, well, Shieldred is good.
Okay, got the binding out of Raja's hand. Let's see if we have another answer. Something like a Solitude or another binding. Looks like a Solitude.
Ouch.
And Jonathan has had enough.
All right, well, certainly not the way Jonathan wanted this semifinal match to start, but Raja Sulaiman has to be thrilled. Picking up the match on the draw means he only has to win one of the remaining two formats, Pioneer or Standard. But that was pretty clean. Raja, okay, maybe there was some fear, like, am I going to draw the lands or not? In both games that came up, but it worked out.
Yeah, the more I think about it, maybe I'm wondering Hobbs maybe thought that might have been his worst matchup and thought that his only chance in Modern was the fact that he was on the play and could maybe sneak in a Grief Not Dead after all. And that's kind of what happens when the scam deck doesn't have the scam, is it plays like a more traditional mid-range deck, but if you have enough answers to the threats, it doesn't really have as good of a long game as something as the 4-color deck with One Ring and Omnath and all that kind of stuff. And that's basically exactly what you saw there. Raja was just able to cleanly answer all the threats and pretty easily dispatch Hobbs.
Yeah. Okay. So that's going to take care of the first format. We're just going to step away for a minute and swap commentators. Devin, thank you for covering. Good job this morning. And we will see you back in the future.
It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks again for having me. And I will see you guys next time.
All right. We'll be back with Jesse Robkin on the other side and continue this top 4 coverage of the Nerd Rage 2023 Championship. Stick around. All right, we're back here with Jesse Robkin for the first time on the NRG Series on this side of things. Good morning. Welcome.
Hello. Yeah, morning.
Well, for me.
For you, okay. Yeah, early afternoon.
Yeah, whatever. It's some time zone everywhere in the world. All right, we're back for the still in the top somewhere. 4 of the Nerd Rage Championship. We have Raja Sulaiman up a format against Jonathan Hobbs. Raja now has the choice and has chosen to play Standard with himself going first here. And Jesse, you said briefly during the break, you feel like this makes sense given the match, given the decks.
Yeah, I have only recently gotten back into Standard for this RCQ season and the upcoming PTQ in Chicago. But my experience so far has been, I've been playing a lot of the Esper deck that Jonathan brought. And I think while the deck is very good, it definitely struggles against other mid-range decks to some extent, because those decks are just like, the Mosswood Dread Knights, the Sentinels, and just the larger, like the Planeswalkers, things like that, have a tendency to go over the top of what Esper is doing, but in a way that's not as exploitable as the way that Domain goes over the top, because you can't really bring in your Disdainful Strokes and things like that against them.
Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and look at the deck lists if we have them available until the players are ready to go. So Standard on tap. And like you're saying, for a lot of these players, I think Pioneer and Modern were probably, if they're regulars in the NRG Series, are the formats that were more relevant to them for the last few years. But Standard, I guess, for players worldwide now taking on renewed importance as the RCQ season does start this weekend. Raja Sulaiman's Golgari mid-range. Lots of mid-range decks in this format. I guess we'll go back to the deck list later as the players are ready to go. So if you were looking for Jonathan's deck list, you can find them. There's links all over the Nerd Rage website, and I'm sure they can get posted in the chat right now if someone's paying attention. But we are underway for format number 2.
And this does seem like the start that Esper would want to effectively get under the slightly larger mid-range deck by having that one drop. Hopefully he can follow it up and just curve all the way out.
Yeah, all right. No play early for Raja Sulaiman.
Oh, but he's relying on a map token to get his Land drop, maybe?
Just get a second land drop. That's a little dicey, isn't it? That walks into a lot of precarious things. But yeah, Otawara being the first land is probably not a sign of a solid mana base for Jonathan Hobbs, in his hand at least. All right. Do we have a follow-up? Are we just trying to bait a removal spell on a bad creature? Maybe so, as there is a land for Jonathan Hobbs, so things are okay.
Yeah, if that's the case, because it looks like he had the tap land. That's a pretty good play then, because you do not want to be spending a go for the throat on with this prism or Preacher of the Schism.
Yeah, Preacher, such a cool card. I'll admit, the first time I was playing it this week, trying to get used to the format, I didn't realize you could get both triggers at the same time. Very well-designed, tricky card, as Raja follows up with the old heavy hitter Shieldred.
Yeah, Shieldred is has an interesting effect on the format. There's so many ways to kill her, like this go for the throat here, but she just is like a removal check, and if you don't have it, you just straight up die.
Right. And facing down things like Rafine that just want to cycle through a bunch of cards, Shield just kind of shuts that down. Raja here playing kind of the slower game here. We see a couple of creature lands among the mana base, and just waiting to get on the board. And Liliana the Veil, okay. Nothing to eat right now, but go ahead and go to work on the hand. Jonathan's ready to discard.
And that's a tough one. Not only is Liliana just like good against all the various threats that Esper has, but picking apart the hand is pretty devastating, because Rafine really wants you to have a critical mass of cards in hand in order to be at full value. And she's really hard to get off the table with out of Esper. They don't really have a lot of Planeswalker removal.
Right. I mean, there are Tishana's Timebinders in Hobbs' sideboard, but those aren't coming into play yet, even though this is more or less the third game of the match. We are still in game one because we are just moved into Modern, and Liliana's going to crank away here. And I haven't seen a Liliana Veil Ultimate in quite some time, but we'll see. And okay, I was going to say maybe Raj is going to hold up defenses for a potential flash creature, but instead just coming across with the Cottage, I guess.
This is like an old school rock deck, just playing Liliana and attacking with Treetop Village.
And may very well be enough. Hobbs with 2 cards in hand after the Liliana activation, and if contemplating a removal spell on this Cottage, okay, that one works. That one works really well. Urtai can.
Oh, that's the perfect. Yeah, that's a perfect removal spell here.
Yeah,
he's tapped. Raj is tapped out, so he can't make any use of the card that he drew from it, and now he gets to actually start pressuring this Liliana.
And Jonathan is going to come in with Rafine also. Okay, so he'll achieve quite a bit here. Potentially hit Liliana for 4, and then it can't even eat a creature. This dramatically changed the course of this game in the last turn cycle.
This is a huge swing.
Wow.
Was that a Preacher you discarded?
It was a Preacher. And then the bat takes down Liliana, leaving Raja with just Takanuma. There is a Shielder in the graveyard, but Raja's probably wondering what happened to my board here. I was looking okay. I had Liliana ticking up, and now I'm buried.
This is a fantastic showing of the strength of the Esper deck, and this shows like just how strong Rafine is. Urtai, perfect curve topper for the deck.
All right, so Raja does come back here with another Planeswalker, with mine's to make tokens, right, for Nissa.
Yeah, it's successively larger tokens each time it gets activated.
Right.
Unfortunately, these tokens don't have reach, despite being big and green.
Yeah, not ideal. Actually, I'm incorrect. It's plus to make tokens. So
yes,
4/4 in here.
Yeah, you'd think it might have secret reach, but
yeah,
for once it does not.
All right, so Jonathan with some real thought on how do I send my creatures here? Does Urkai attack at all? And if it does it receive the Rafine boost? Do I attack the Planeswalkers? This is a lot to think about here. Also tricky because you don't even know how much damage you're attacking for until you connive.
Yeah, I didn't see what Jonathan drew, but my instinct would be that you do offer the trade with that creature because you want to keep the board. Like, there's going to be a 5/5 next turn unless you deal some damage to the
Nissa.
Yeah.
And yet you're incentivized to send something at Liliana, even if it's just 1 damage to prevent the edict from happening. So
my instinct is you want to probably get at least a counter on the Rafine, because the bat's a kind of a removable magnet anyway, because there's a Liliana underneath it, and the Rafine has that mana tax, but it does somewhat defend. Oh yeah, cycling that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, indeed. Found a cut down, so that means the Rafine is guaranteed to be able to pitch something, and Jonathan will declare attacks here. We'll figure it out. Looks like Urtai and maybe Rafine also, so probably nothing going at Raja himself.
I can't imagine he attacks Raja at all
Yeah.
here.
And Raja's
Okay,
like,
so
you know what?
the flyers are both going at. Oh, interesting.
Raja's like, clarify this for the viewers at home. What are you doing? And so if this is the attack, then Jonathan does not guarantee that Liliana won't be able to edict this turn.
Yeah, this is an interesting decision because now Raja can trade with the 4/3. The Nissa will die, but Liliana can edict away one of the creatures, and then I guess Jonathan has to sack the Rafine. Otherwise, Liliana under the bat makes him sack the Rafine anyway.
No, yeah, you'd definitely be right about that. Okay, so most of the board clears away, and that's unfortunate that for Jonathan Hobbs, the way that's going to work out. So I wonder, maybe, and with a land left over in hand. So this would be sweet here.
If this was his plan, I would have put the counters on the bat because you're going to be left with the bat anyway.
Right, I agree with you there. So Roger probably thinking the same. And if he draws a blank here, he may just be edict and send in with the other cottage, as there's no blocking. And yeah, there goes the Rafine. And Jonathan left the 1/1 lifelinker with flying and. Well, this game looked like it might be over both directions, and now we might be in for a while here.
This is what I love about Standard right now is games get so swingy like this. A single top deck just completely changes the direction of the advantage bar.
Raja thinking about what to exile here. Takanuma being one irrelevant graveyard card that may be in Jonathan's deck. Or maybe coming off the top. Let's see. Food is created. And so both players with some life gain as well. So no hurry to get this over with. All
Schooner, not a bad draw.
Not bad, not bad.
This is probably around the average draw that he could have had, honestly.
Yeah, but doesn't Jonathan owed an above average draw after the beating in the last match?
The problem with Magic is nobody's owed anything.
All right, Raja's happy as a man here. Has to play. All right.
Ooh, that's a nice one.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. The Schooner can trade with that on defense if Hobbs holds back the bat, which is, not exciting, but Raja
it doesn't actually trade since it's a 3/4. And Gix does not have Death Touch despite looking very mean. Oh, wow. All right, here's an above average draw for you, Joe.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so here in Hobbs with his own Gix and sending in two creatures, finds a land from the Schooner, and Raja shakes his head and now has to figure out how we get out of this mess. High left totals on both sides, so Gix able to draw plenty of cards with no real drawback at this point.
I love that Jonathan has 3 Gix in his deck. The card is just so good. It's like, in some situations, better than Rafine. Like, it's specifically this example, it's a place where it's better than Rafine.
Yeah, and more lands, and Raja's going to take his opportunity here to gain some life with his food because there's nothing else going on. And once again, facing down, he was able to dig his way out against a pretty intimidating board in the past, but seeing one again here, okay, Gix is going to swing back, which makes sense.
Raja also in the awkward position where he needs one more land to activate Gix, but if he draws that land, he doesn't have any cards to discard to Gix. Gix's activation looks like flavor text, but I've had games decided by one of the players getting to activate it for 2 or 3.
Sure, we'll see if we can get to that as the Moss Knight for Raja. I don't remember the exact name of the card. It's something like that. Mosswood Dread Knight. All right, we'll find a replacement card and can enter the board, but this is not going to compare the card advantage Jonathan's going to reach if this bat hits again with the X in play.
This is
Raja's
where
face.
if I was Raja, I couldn't help but think about the siren that I spent a go for the throat on early in the game.
Yeah. It looked appealing at the time, which is kudos to Jonathan Hobbs for putting up a convincing display that he needed that map token to resolve, and was really just bluffing there. It could have cared less. And now the beatdowns continue here. Schooner Power Guy Gix and the bat coming in. And well, the Mosswood Dread Knight does do quite a bit of work making up for the card disadvantage of Jonathan's Gix hitting, as Raja can block each turn and pick up a card at the cost of, granted, 2/3 of his mana.
Yeah, it's not often these recursive threats get to block, but it's always fun when they do.
Something being clarified with the table judge here, but yeah, the block is going to happen. And Jonathan will pick up another card.
Looks like Jonathan has a Make Disappear as his only spell.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Are we going to get the activation? Let's go!
Oh, we are. Okay. So 2 lands discarded, 2 cards off the top. Looks like Lateral Waste and Go for the Throat. Well, I mean, that's maybe less exciting than it could have been, but still very, very strong.
That's the thing, is even your lower tier hits are still, I mean, if you're discarding cards to Gix, they probably aren't very good, so you're just upgrading every single one.
All right, Raja, we've seen you dance out of some rough scenarios here.
Let's see what Raja's even trying to draw to. Gix's command would not even be that good, but it would. Oh wait, yeah, he would be able to sack biggest creature and destroy all creatures' power 2 or less. That's probably his best draw at this point.
That would be good. Virtue Persistence would be something if he's able to hardcast it eventually and really pick up a long game advantage.
Oh, Shieldred's not terrible.
No,
Shieldred punishes the Gix draws, because then now it takes
sure
3 life.
Jonathan quickly draws there. There might have been another Gix that was drawn. I'm not sure, but here we go. Attack for 1. So somewhat negating the life loss from Shieldred by the bat having life link.
Yeah, and he's got some room to play with his life total.
Yeah, he's also got 2 cards in hand. Does Gix just spin it up again?
If he doesn't draw something good, then if he doesn't draw a removal spell for Shieldred, I would be pretty tempted to just spin the wheel with Gix. Imagine if you hit Virtue with Persistence.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Glissa and a bat.
See, those are still better than 2 redundant Gixes.
Absolutely.
This is exactly what I was talking about. You get to these points in Standard where you've been trading resources. Both players have a ton of mana, and you have a Gix in play. You just start dumping every card you draw to the Gix.
Yeah, and this becomes real problematic for Raja here with a land drop. And probably would have preferred that he had drawn the Glissa Sunslayer instead of Jonathan.
This game also goes to show the power of the bat in Standard. Like, this bat has just stayed on the battlefield for so long.
Right. I mean, it feels like it's so flimsy. It's not kind of really, probably it was thought it would interact. And yet it's the most played card in Standard based on something I saw this week. And, you kind of see why. It's easy to fit in every deck. It's a nuisance. It has lifelink. I mean, honestly, this bat could be a 3/3, as we talked about several turns ago. And if it was, this would be even more out of hand, but still doing work even as it is.
Yeah, the fact that it has lifelink is just such a big game for making the body relevant. Whereas a card like Freebooter, which obviously, Freebooter only hits non-creature spells, but it's just like night and day how much better Bat is than Freebooter.
All right, Raja. Oh, yeah, Cottage just going to chump the Glissa. That is not exciting.
Yeah.
And then pile
this is so good. First Strike, Death Touch. What a combo!
I know. And I mean, a 1/1 with those abilities is strong. And here's Glissa with a 3 with.
You need 4 blockers.
Yeah,
that all have 3 power in order to kill Glissa.
And that's not exactly a welcome trade either.
No.
All right. I mean, this is just kind of. I mean, Jonathan's just having a ball here. I mean, picks up a card, can just, pitch his hand to Gix again. Yeah, sure, why not?
It's remarkable seeing the difference in body language based from last match.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan up in his seat, little smile on his face as he discards more cards to Gix.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally people talk about who's having the fun in Magic. Is fun equivalent? Is it no? Jonathan's having all the fun right now, and that's saying something. So Raja has a Shieldred in play. Shieldred's a cool card, drain your opponent over time, but it's just nearly me. Yep, and there it is. Okay, Jonathan picks up game 1. So first mark in the win column for Jonathan Hobbs in this semifinals. But as Raja picks up one of Jonathan's cards by accident there at the end. All right, we'll go ahead and bring up the deck list, get a full look at what's going on. If you want to look ahead at home or look ahead what potentially would be upcoming in the third format, you can find all the deck lists at the Nerd Rage website. In the meantime, here is Golgari mid-range from Raja Sulaiman. Smattering of removal, some value creatures, some planeswalkers, and it all amounted to getting beat down pretty hard in that game.
Yeah, very, very swingy game. That Gix top deck draw from Jonathan was just absolutely brutal. Exactly the kind of card you want to draw in that case. I really like the Aquazots in both players' sideboards, actually. That card is just impossible to get rid of.
And pronounce, yeah.
And yeah, I think I got it right this time, but I have pronounced it incorrectly probably every time I've tried to pronounce it before this.
Well, that's brave. I haven't even tried. It's just the 5-drop that has a backside. All right, so you can see the sideboard there for Raja Sulaiman. Let's go ahead and look at Jonathan Hobbs' Esper mid-range as the players are looking at each other's deck lists at the same time. Again, a mid-range deck. We've seen it before. It's got a lot of flash threats. It's got a lot of card advantage. I think the version that I watched play yesterday did not have the Spyglass Siren in it, so there are some differences in the lists. And we did see it play its role.
Yeah,
in this
I like
game.
the Spyglass Sirens with the schooners.
Yeah.
Post board, I imagine you also want your Aquazots, probably your Destroy Evils, as additional answers to the Shieldreds of the world. And your Tidebinders seem like the best answer to the Planeswalkers.
Sure, yeah, Tidebinder can do a lot here, and it's maybe not super common that a lot of creature bodies, they aren't going to trigger, but Shieldred is always going to trigger every single turn, so Tidebinder does have the opportunity to hit that as well. We could easily see those. Just having another flash threat is nice. Like you said, the Planeswalkers. I mean, there's a lot going on here, a lot of capabilities, and these mid-range decks, they have a lot of options, and probably Raja, looking at Jonathan Hobbs' deck list right now, just as we are, may not be able to accurately determine exactly what Jonathan's going to be doing here. Which is nice because in a lot
one of the big questions I have.
Go ahead.
Oh, one of the big questions I have when I'm playing these mid-range mirrors is how many copies of Cut Down you want in your deck post-board on either side, because they have some great targets. Rafine's one of the better targets. Fairy Mastermind. I imagine these Deep Cavern Bats are likely coming out for Jonathan, but I'm not 100% sure about that. They do seem somewhat fragile.
Yeah, and that goes to what I was saying. And Raja probably doesn't know 100% what's going to happen either, which it's always nice. I'm always comforted when sideboarding knowing if my opponent doesn't know exactly what to do against me. That generally just increases your chance of winning just by the littlest bit. And even though these players are both very experienced, put in lots of miles in all the formats of Magic over the last several years, this is still, Standard is relatively new ground for a lot of these players.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's interesting with the 3-year rotation. If they played Standard, like, for instance, for last year's RC, a lot of the cards are roughly the same.
No, they are. So,
but this LCR is very powerful.
Yeah. So if we have a little bit more time to kill, they're still looking at each other's deck lists. If you're moving into a new format, like Standard right now, which I don't know how much experience you have with Standard before the last few months. I didn't personally have much. Is there a type of deck that you like to experiment with when you're moving to a new format? Do you want to be playing control deck, a mid-range deck, an aggro deck? Is there something that you feel like you learn about the format faster or more efficiently playing with? Or do you just kind of try to play
question.
You just play a few games with kind of everything and see where it falls?
Yeah, I think the like sort of conventional wisdom would be that mid-range deck is the best way to experience a format fresh. My general approach is to find cards that that like are strong in other formats and gravitate toward those and
Okay.
see how they like line up in the context of the other format. Especially if we're going like down in formats, like from modern down to Pioneer or Pioneer down to Standard.
Yeah.
So
So
that's generally my first instinct.
Right. So what you're saying is basically if a card seems playable in Modern, then in Standard it's probably pretty good. That's what we're saying there. Yeah. And that
Yeah,
makes sense.
generally speaking, as long as it doesn't rely on fetch lands.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. Yeah. So and we see that here. I mean, Tidebinder playable in Modern, sort of. Potentially, useful in Standard. Shieldred playable in Modern, potentially good in Standard. So yeah, no, that's a decent metric to at least keep in mind as you're examining a new format. Players have finally finished consulting. I mean, they've had a while to think about this. Why are we waiting for them to re-examine? I mean, I know you're going to do that. You're sitting down. You were here last year. What was your mindset?
I was indeed playing against one of these players in the finals.
What was the mindset? Like, were you? Well, we'll get to that later. We'll play out this game and then we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. As game 2 underway, a flurry of land drops, no plays as of yet. Jonathan, once again, not an ideal land on turn 1. And
yeah, it always feels bad when you have to lead on a pain land. Although he may have done that in order to hold up a cut down or something like that.
Sure.
For a 2-drop.
Raja does have Liliana the Veil in hand, and I think several go for the throat, so lots of removal, and doesn't want to commit Liliana maybe into a flash threat, which is what Jonathan has. It's very Mastermind enters play. And we can see Gix and cut down.
One of the questions.
Uh-huh.
The perennial question on turn 3 is: do you lead on Gix or Rafine if you have access to both? And I generally lean Rafine early in the game because you need a critical mass of cards in your hand. Although Gix does help you get those cards, so I'm not precisely sure what the right answer is there.
Okay, well, Jonathan does go with Gix here, and Raja, with removal in hand, do you go after Gix or Fairy Mastermind? The answer is Fairy Mastermind. If there's a follow-up Liliana that makes sense, this is just no reason to take a hit if you don't need to, and it is going to be the play. So stable board at the moment, but as we saw last game, things can change rather dramatically multiple times within a game.
Yeah, we'll see how long this Liliana is given the opportunity to work. If Jonathan has another one of those Ties, that's going to be pretty powerful here.
Yeah, it certainly would be. Jonathan thinking things through. How does he want to proceed with this turn? And frustratingly for the opposition, I mean, if your opponent passes here, there's no guarantee that it's not, it could be a counter, it could be a creature, it could just be removal, it could be, you can't tell what the Esper Range deck is holding just by them passing the turn with no action.
Yeah, I saw, I think, what looked like a Fairy Mastermind in Jonathan's hand, which is the perfect answer to a shield or to a Liliana on 2 loyalty. The nightmare would be if he has Make Disappear plus Fairy Mastermind and Raja goes for something like a Shieldred. That would be a real swing.
It definitely would, and Raja probably aware of that and ask how many cards in hand. Do you start taking up Liliana now? No, we're going to commit to the board. Okay, Mosswood to draw.
Mosswood Dread Knight is such a cool card.
It is. It is well designed. It looks overpowering, but I don't actually think it is. It's just solid, right? It's just it's fair, right? It's got a lot going on.
Yeah, I totally agree.
All right. Liliana does activate. Both players pitch a card. Jonathan pitches cut down a land for Raja. And now it's Fairy Mastermind. And Raja can remove it if there's no counter magic from Jonathan waiting. Raja has cut down and go for the throat. So he's either choosing rule spell or choosing whether he wants to let Jonathan untap first. And that's what it is. So willing to give up potentially into a stronger a more expensive counter as opposed to kind of inflicting Jonathan's mana development for the turn.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I think there's a punish regardless of which one you choose, but I think being more mana efficient makes sense since you're bad against make disappear in the spot anyway.
Sure. And all right, Raja has left the table. Did leave his phone. Courteous man indeed. And I don't know if this is a mid-game. Okay, this is Raja decided he needed to go to the bathroom and wasn't interested in waiting until the end of the game, the end of the match. So okay.
Yeah, you get to take a free bathroom break whenever you want. So it's actually optimal to use that.
Might as well.
You want to get your full value out of your experience.
So now that we have a moment, do you want to speak to your experience playing at the end of the tournament last year and how that felt either emotionally or just kind of strategically, or just any thoughts that you that stand out to you?
Absolutely. I have a pretty vivid memory of this experience. First of all, playing in one of these tournaments where you get, it's sort of a test of endurance more than anything else. You play so much Magic. It was just such a fun time, and very happy for these players that they get to experience it. Playing specifically against Raja in the finals, we played a grueling set of 3 matches, and I just remember feeling like it was just dead silent in the room, and we were thinking, each one of us thinking so carefully about every single play we were making, and just nodding, and every once in a while, me or him would break the tension with a joke that hit extra hard because everybody was so laser focused. It was. Raja is one of those players where he does not rush into any decision. He really takes his time and he sort of considers the ramifications of every play he could make, which leads to a very intimidating experience when you're playing against him. So you kind of have to slip into that exact same mindset.
That makes sense. It is stressful, and it is. I mean, that's the idea. We want to put the players to the test. We want to see who can. The idea is not to see who is the victor on stamina, but that does come into a role. Does play a role. And I know we interviewed Theo Zhang at the end of the day yesterday, and he was one of the players that had to play all day long. And he was exhausted. He was tired, worn out. And yet you come back for day 2 and you just have to keep slogging through. And is there something else you'd rather be doing right now? These are competitive Magic players. They want to be here, even if it's grueling.
Absolutely.
And Raja is back, so we'll return to the table.
I do also remember taking the occasional bathroom break just to recenter myself because you're so locked in. You need sense to just release the tension for a second.
All right. Well, we'll see if we get a chance to ask him that if we interview him later on today. Did you actually have to go to the bathroom,
or did you just need a break?
Yeah.
He just took a 30-second nap in the bathroom.
All right. So Gix from Jonathan Hobbs here into the Liliana potential edict. So Raja may be wondering, do you have a flash creature? Is this a trick, or you just not have anything else and you're just going to use it to try and kill the Liliana? And Raja is going to go up.
This does imply he has a way to deal with this Gix somehow. He does have the blocker, but oh wow, Lockthwain scoring such a great answer for this. Although it should be in the adventure zone.
I'm sure someone will notice that soon, I would imagine. And we have. Okay, maybe I spoke too soon.
I don't think that's the thing you can miss.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get the Virtue in the right zone. He's happy to put the Mosswood in the right zone. Maybe he just thinks he'll never get to 7 mana, so it doesn't matter.
Well,
but this is exactly the kind of game the Golgari deck wants to play. I know the Gixis command bought a couple creatures back, but I'm not even sure how that card is all that good in the matchup. It really only has 2 modes, which is sack your largest creature and bring back a bunch of stuff. You're not really ever wrapping the board. Still in the wrong zone for the Virtue. Let's see.
Well, we didn't miss that being discarded low on the Veil, right? That did kill the Gix.
I'm fairly certain.
Yeah. Okay. Well, production should be overhearing us right now, so they'll. If we're wrong, then we're wrong, and we'll continue on with the game, and we'll see if it gets caught eventually. Either way, Mosswood coming across here. Glissa joins it. Liliana on the board, and Jonathan.
This is textbook Golgari.
Yeah.
Oh no, the game ended in the wrong board state.
Well, I don't think Raj is too concerned about it right now, as he does even up the match. And Jonathan Hobbs here, playing for his tournament life, needs to pick up this game, as Raja already up a format and now evens things up in standard. And if Jonathan does win this game, then match 3 will be Pioneer, as that is what's remaining. But that's a long ways off at this point. This is tough stuff. I know I have played a few of these events myself, not the Star City branded versions, and yeah, I agree with everything Jesse said. And it's kind of as you complete matches, it's more of a relief instead of it's not something you're celebrating. It's something like, oh, okay, we're still in it, we're still going. It's just you're trying to achieve as much as you can. And Raj has been here before, been this deep in the event. And so he knows what's up, the defending champion. I mean, that's winning 2 of these in a row. Yeah, that would be something. That would be really impressive. Matt Hoey on the other side of the bracket versus Steven Dykman. Matt Hoey has also been here multiple times before the NRG Championship. At some point, maybe we can get an update on how those players are faring, progressing through the match. And if this one does complete first, we will pick up however much is remaining in the other match. In the meantime, let's hit you with the schedule again for the first half of the year. If you want to attempt to join us here next year at the NRG Championship, or just come out and spend a weekend, play some side events, compete in whatever format you like, you can see the first half of the year, the announced schedule, February 17th, 18th in Chicagoland. Significant because it is a week before the Pro Tour. So if you are playing in the Pro Tour, you want to come out a week early and test your mettle in the 10K Pioneer on Saturday. There's also 5K Standard on Sunday. Then in later in April in Minneapolis, 10K Modern Showdown, 5K Legacy Trial. May 11th and 12th in Indianapolis. Showdowns both days. So both events auto-qualifying players for the championship. And then June in St. Louis, 10K Pioneer, 5K Modern. I want to mention, and I did not bring this up yesterday, start times for all NRG events this year are changing. We're starting at 9 o'clock now. So if you were just marking your calendar, but not your actual alarm clock based on experience the last few years, you might want to change things. However, that was noted by the judge staff that there may be a fair amount of leniency on tardiness penalties on the first event of the year, because some of you will not listen.
I'm so glad you said that, because I did not know that, and I would absolutely have shown up in round 2.
There was a thought that was likely to happen. All right, not you specifically, just people in general.
Yeah.
Okay, so Matthew Hoey and Steven Dykman are playing Pioneer first, and they are 1-1 in their first match. We did stagger the matches a little bit, so there is more likely to be some overlap. So we can bring you some of the other semifinal if this one doesn't last too long. We know Raja tends to take his time in some of his matches, especially the ones where he's playing blue-white. So we'll see whether that happens or not.
Yeah. Something to keep in mind if you're planning to come to the Chicago Pro Tour PTQ, the standard one, this standard showdown on Sunday, the week before, is the perfect opportunity to run your deck through the ringer. I know anytime I play a tournament, I always leave the tournament being like, wow, my deck would be so much better if I got to do a do-over. And you kind of get that with the way that things work out this time around.
Yeah, there you can see it with the different art style than we've had in the past. But the Chicagoland event.
This looks sick, by the way.
Yeah, it does. And
also, this.
I'll mention, I don't know the name of the new venue, but the Chicago events are no longer going to be in Mundelein. So that is another thing to look into. Don't just mark your calendar. You might not only might you show up a half hour late, you might be in the wrong city.
I'm going to show up to the DoubleTree at
in
round 2 with a deck I hadn't even sleeved yet.
And honestly, there's probably be enough people there to draft with.
That's true. At least there's that consolation prize.
All right. So good times coming this year. New Rage owner Norman Cohen happy with how things have gone recently. Going to run it back for another year. So 2024 season in full effect as we shuffle up for game 3 here. Raja Sulaiman. And now Jonathan, can we coordinate these things a little bit better? Jonathan Hobbs now in the restroom.
Yeah.
Normally,
it is actually optimal to go to the restroom first. You do not want to be the second person to go to the restroom.
High-level insight from Jesse Robkin. Explain why.
Mostly the smell.
Okay. Fair enough. I was hoping for some kind of strategic insight, and you gave me with that. But okay, all right.
I think it's some high-level strategy, but that's fine.
All right, Hobbs sitting down, and actually in the background of Raj's player cam, I just saw Matthew Hoy walking by. So maybe the players are just taking turns. All the semifinalists taking turns in the restroom, one by one. All right, Raja shuffling up. Jonathan's already presented. Can he run it back? Can he win again? The other match, Steven Dykman has just won the Pioneer match against Matthew Hoy. So they were 1-1. It is now one match in favor of Steven Dykman. Those players completed Pioneer, so they've got Modern and Standard left. Here, we're in the middle of Standard with with Pioneer left over if Jonathan Hobbs is able to take down this next game.
And if Jonathan does take down this game, we'll see, I believe, the same matchup that Dykman and Hoy just had on the other side of the Blue-White Yorion versus Rakdos. Is that right, man?
That's I don't have the other.
Yes, that is. Yeah.
Okay.
Which, if I were Jonathan Hobbs, I'd be feeling pretty good about my chances if I can get to that point. Although you don't want to get ahead of yourself, you got to make sure you can win this game first.
Mm-hmm. Out of the 3 formats, did any of the meta games surprise you more than the other? I know for the Modern seemed more stock, I would say, than the other 2 formats.
Modern just looked like just Modern as
right.
2 or 3 Murktide, 2 or 3 of every other deck. Standard also made a lot of sense, like a lot of Domain, a lot of Esper, and then a smattering of other people with meta calls. So I think Pioneer definitely having, I believe, 6 Blue-White Yorion players.
Yeah, I was surprised.
The players are after my heart. Like I'm so chuffed to have seen that. I love Blue-White Yorion Pioneer, and I think it's legitimately kind of good right now. As evidenced by two copies in the top 4. I was surprised to see so little Amalia. I think that deck is still quite strong.
Yes.
Though, if I registered Amalia and saw 6 Blue-White players in the 16-player field, I would regret all of my life decisions that led me to that point.
I had to say, I was so surprised that our Amalia player 3 cut a Wild Growth Walker, just de-emphasizing the combo aspect just by the smallest amount. But that was maybe that's become the new thing. But I was unaware of that, and that was surprising to me.
I honestly don't hate that idea. When I was first picking up Amalia, that was the first thing I considered doing, because the problem with Wild Growth Walker is it doesn't do anything when you're not comboing. Like, send out Scout's not very good.
Okay. All right. The players, this is the way they look when they're waiting for us. So if somehow that's the case, go ahead and give them the go ahead, because we're ready to go. They both appear to have, maybe they're waiting for the table judge. It's unclear for the moment, but yes, we've had bathroom breaks. We've had all kinds of acceptable excuses, but now so now we are in fact waiting for the table judge now. All right, everyone taking their turn, slowing down the progression of this match. That's okay. We've got all day. These rounds are untimed. We are, I guess, going to come back to the booth for a moment. So if I don't have chat open, this is the moment. This is the time I could use the inspiration of chat. What do you want to hear about? I don't have it open, so we'll just free will. Jesse Robkin played through the year.
To bust out my freestyle rap.
Right. Well, you know what? We're good timing. The game is already back in progress. Let's go back down to the table to save us all from whatever that may have sounded like. I mean, I know the screenwriters, the poets, they probably have interesting lyrics. Presentation might be up in the air, but we'll save you all at home from experiencing that. All right, Schooner on the board here for Jonathan to open things up in game 3. And there's no potential play for Raj at the end of Jonathan's turn, so we must be contemplating a land drop here. Two swamps and a pilfer, I believe.
Oh, wow.
All right,
Pilfer's a lot like bat, except just a little different.
Yeah. Same mana cost. You still get to look at your opponent's hand. Choose a non-land card. Well, Jonathan presents a pair of doubles and a Gix. So Raja knows his hand. Well, actually, is the dual land for Jonathan?
Third land drop here.
Yeah, no third land drop. And is that third land drop?
No black source.
Yeah, no black source. Okay, that's what I was thinking. So do you then?
I did think that island was a swamp until.
So does Raja make disappear? He does. And this is kind of the situation Raja put himself in a couple times during the modern portion of this match, just needing to draw a land off the top. Did, and so does Jonathan. So not to be outdone. And now we'll take a look at what Raja's got to work with. And we see a Llanowar Wastes, Mosswood Dread Knight, Shieldred, Liliana go for the throat, and a Sentinel. So Jonathan with lots of options here. I mean, the bats generally would like to take removal to protect themselves, but if Jonathan wants to do that, what you take go for the throat and then pass on your attack so you can sack the Schooner to Liliana? That's something, I guess. Otherwise, you could take. Okay, you just take Liliana. Now he's going to attack, and then just Raja can still do the same thing, but it's going to take a while. And Jonathan picks up the 4th land off of the attack, so it's a big deal. You actually saw a little bit of a fist pump there.
Yeah, that Gix is coming.
All right, so Raja with just a Llanowar Waste and a pass here. If you are enjoying the coverage and you are interested in seeing us again for the next year's events, all of them will be broadcast here on Twitch. So remember to follow both on social media and here and receive notifications when we go live. As Jonathan drops a second bat into play, I'll take another look at Raja's hand.
Good, because I didn't get to catch every single card last time. So this is exactly what I needed. Thank you, Jonathan.
Maybe Jonathan didn't write them down either. And he was like, oh.
Yeah. He's like, let's take another look.
I was going to play Gix, but I forgot your hand, so let me see it again.
I do like this sequencing because you get to hold up that second make disappear.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, drawing that 4th land was beneficial for sure. And Raja's going to figure out how to navigate the known cards in Jonathan's hand, which do include Make Disappear and Gix. All right. Take down the bat. Jonathan Cruz in response.
All right. Well.
And the fresh card is Anoint the Affliction. So
it's now Raja's turn to have the mana issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that second Make Disappear face up, which a lot of the time is kind of a death sentence for the card because your opponent can play around it. But Raja can't really afford to do so here. So it's honestly, so now his goal is to find a way to get it out of Jonathan's hand without spending too powerful of a card to do so.
Oh, Fairy Mastermind, extra card drawn for Jonathan, and this could snowball pretty quickly here as Jonathan is picking up cards. If he finds another land, then he could actually protect Gix with the counter, which with multiple would be 3 attackers on the board. That really could get things out of hand very quickly here. John, there's a land.
Yep.
And Raja's smiling, giggling almost like, oh boy, you drew a triple lands in a row, but I didn't, and this might be curtains already.
Yeah. This is exactly the way that you win these games with Esper. Is you just get your cheap threats into play and then hold up those make disappears and make life miserable for your opponent.
Yeah, Jonathan empty-handed during declare attackers, and now with 4 cards in hand. And at the cost of 3 life, not too bad of a deal. Actually, 2 life even. The bat will give 1 back, and Jonathan just drew more cards than Raja has permanents.
Life-linking flyer that steals a card out of your opponent's hand and then draws you a card for the cost of a life, that's a Splinterstone situation.
It seems like that should be a gold card at least, right? That doesn't sound like just a black card.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Raja Sulaiman, what do we think? We're going to see another format, or are you going to somehow come back here? Some judge consultation there, but I think we're okay. All right, talking to a Shieldred. That's
classic
something.
Flip Shieldred onto the table and hope it's good enough.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be, but we'll see. We'll see. Shieldred is very powerful.
A mere 5 cards in Jonathan's hand.
All right. Well, maybe Jonathan will just, trigger Rafine a whole bunch of times here. And this is quite a bit of life loss, but I guess Raja's not overly concerned about it. Jonathan's not overly concerned about it.
It's probably lethal.
It's just lethal. Yeah. Okay, so Jonathan wins the standard portion of the match.
Is a huge player in this matchup. That card just gets out of hand so quickly, and allows you to just avoid overcommitting into a sweeper because it's a card advantage engine. It's damage output. So I would say Inti and Reckoner Bankbuster are the two drops that I would really be keeping an eye on. And as blue-white, if my opponent doesn't play a 2-drop on turn 2, I feel way better about my chances of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here's the thoughts. He's both players on 6 cards. We saw them each bottom 1. The reveal for Raja, we see Demolition Field, only 1 other land, it looks like. No, I'm sorry, there's 2 there. Wandering Emperor, Dovin Zito, and Memory Deluge. So a little slow, maybe, but some interactive tools here.
It depends on what Jonathan's hand has, but I would snap off the Memory Deluge here. I'm pretty happy as Rakdos trading 1-for-1 with the random stuff, but it looks like he took the March. So egg on my face. Seems like some 2-drop seems pretty important for him.
Well, good covering for me because I didn't even correctly identify the card, but Reckoner Bankbuster is the follow-up here for Jonathan. Doesn't necessarily indicate playing. I like how Bankbuster can either just be a beater or it can be a card advantage engine. So you don't really know how he's going to pace the game just on that being the play. Well, now we do.
Yeah. Bankbuster is it's just so powerful. Oh yeah, missing a land drop. So that makes sense why he would have opted to protect his Bankbuster from the March.
Sure. All right. So Raja drew Omen of the Sea, does cast it to get things rolling on his side. And yeah, Jonathan down a land drop once again. And Raja will figure out how he wants to pace this, how he wants to make this happen. We know he's got Memory Deluge, so there's at least 1 more land in hand. So really in no trouble of making it through into the mid-game and the developmental portion of the game. Jonathan, not quite there yet.
Something about the blue-white deck that I have noticed is rather than having like a specific draw that punishes, like most decks in Pioneer have a nut draw that like just punishes their opponent sort of regardless of the matchup. Blue-white's nut draw is their opponent stumbling in any way. That's the way that blue-white is. All of a sudden you're leaning forward in your chair. You're feeling better about your chances.
All right. Well, then Raja must be feeling good here. And for Jonathan, you missed a land drop. Okay, you missed 1 land drop. that's not the end of the world, right? I mean, I'm sure you're not thrilled on turn 3 having to pass, but here you're kind of reinvigorated. You're okay.
Totally agree.
And Jonathan will figure out the play here. So, I mean, drawing at now. Okay, I was gonna say drawing a card with Bankbuster now doesn't seem great. NT comes down. You're vulnerable to lockdown, obviously, but that's probably just something you live with, right?
Yeah. Inti and Bankbuster, not nearly as much of a combo as Inti and Smuggler's Copter. So
Yeah.
Inti is still a powerful card in its own right.
All right, so March does wipe out the Bankbuster. Raja leaves Jonathan the creature in play, and is this NT going to get to attack? It does appear that that's the case. All right, Raja is willing to let this come in here, and Jonathan with a maybe the best discard. Is that Croxa in hand?
It looks like it might be.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yep. And Raja with the punishing blue-white mana base, tap land on turn 4 means he can't even end of turn Memory Deluge here. Yeah,
absolutely. Demolition Field activation against Jonathan's deck, not something to be too excited about, but Fable the Mirror Breaker off of the NT is tremendous. Swapping that out for the Croxa, Jonathan's got to be happy about that, whether it resolves or not, and that's up to Raja right now. But, I mean, we know Dovin's Veto in hand. I guess, is it the option, Dovin's Veto or Demolition Field, to clean up your mana?
I have a hard time imagining what would be better than Dovin's Vetoing here, and it looks like Raja agrees.
Yeah, gets out of his hand, finds. I mean, there's not too many better targets, are there, in John's deck anyway, for the veto to hit.
Yeah, one of the better targets is in exile already with the Bankbuster.
All right, a third tap land for Raj, but now with 4 untapped, does turn on the majority of his deck. And Jonathan is going to come in again here.
And here's the classic squeeze for playing against blue-white. They're on 4 mana. That you know they have Memory Deluge in hand, but do they also have Wandering Emperor? You have to decide whether or not to attack into it.
Yeah, and you kind of, I mean, you're probably not passing up too many attacks with that. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. It is frustrating when you have to do that. And it is shielded. As Jonathan slowly builds up the graveyard for Croxa, not there yet. And Raja, all right. Is it going to be Memory Deluge? Is it going to be another counter? Is it going to be? It's not going to be Wandering Emperor at this point.
Certainly not.
And you're right. I mean, Raja really does contemplate all his plays. He does not rush, and we're untimed rounds. There's no reason to.
If this were me, I would have just snapped off the Memory Deluge looking for a Wrath. And that shows why Raja is the methodical player that he is.
I'd be curious to see it. Well, I don't have sight of the rest of Raja's hand now, but I'm curious what else he has that is requiring this much thought. I mean, he's not going to Demolition Field to Hive the Eye Tyrant here. I wouldn't imagine. So it's Memory Deluge or something.
The only reason to do that would be if he had a 2-mana counter for this Shield Rid in hand. But so that was what he was tanking on, was whether or not to hit the Demolition. Oh, but the issue is if it's Censor, he can't Demolition Field first because then he has the mana to pay for it.
Right. Good call. Okay, so that does make sense. That all was probably what Raja was thinking about. And passes the turn here with shielded off the board. Memory Deluge still in hand. But this Inti cranking away here. Ooh.
And this game is exactly what I'm talking about when I say Inti is one of the most important cards in the matchup. The amount of card advantage it's generated, the pressure it's generated, just steadily getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
to clear the way.
Raja looking at Jonathan's graveyard here, wanting to know how many cards are in it. Can the Crows come back this turn? The answer is yes. So Raja even has the option here. Does he potentially, if he some more expensive interaction here, you would still be able to just discard the Memory Deluge to the Croxa and then flash it back in the future if he draws a land, but then he's in rough shape on the board. So he's gonna looks like play in response here, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
All
if he
right.
had 7 lands, I would have been tempted to just let the Memory Deluge go to the graveyard, end of turn, cast a 7-mana Dig Through Time. But in this case, he's on the back foot, and he desperately needs to find an answer both to the Inti on the board and the Kroxa that will soon be on the board. Temporary Lockdown could be a good one, but if he hits it here, it gets duress out of the hand. So difficult spot.
All right, more. Cycle Sensor. Okay, that's interesting. He's looking for Okay, Sunfall is the choice. So he was a 2 land remaining. All right, no action for Raja, but Memory Deluge in the graveyard. Jonathan figuring out the rest of the turn. Kroxa waiting. Lots going on here. Things looking very good for Jonathan, as Raja's going to need a whole another turn just to flash back the Memory Deluge and get something going. Are you? I mean, we're just heavily favoring Jonathan at this point in this game, right?
Yeah. The way. Let's see. Does Raja have Farewell? He does not. Okay, so the way out of this would be a top decked Temporary Lockdown, like right now. And it might be worth cracking the Omen to find, because he is dead if he has nothing and Jonathan untaps.
Okay, he agrees with you. The Ante did not discard on attack this time around, as Jonathan knew he was spending his mana on the Croak, so just got in for 4. And Raja, going to think this over. It looks like Plains and maybe another March, but that's not good enough, I don't think.
If that's a March, then yeah, it's certainly not good enough. There's also the Hive of the Eye Tyrant still to come as well.
Right. All right, Raja will dump both cards and cross his fingers. Draw off the top is another land, and Jonathan Hobbs will pick up game 1 here in the third format. Things look pretty. Yeah.
Sorry. Textbook example of Rakdos leveraging discard spells, cheap threats, just making life really difficult for the blue-white player, especially when Rakdos is on the play.
Yeah, and that Kroxa obviously came in big. That's a 1-of in the deck, but it's in the deck so you can draw it, or in this case, discard it, and it did pay off big time for Hobbs. Let's go ahead and bring up the Pioneer deck lists and see what else the players have to work with. Raja Sulaiman, the blue-white Yorion. So you said that you liked the Yorion versions more, and that's more so because of being able to fit in the additional cards that are just all useful, or because you actually think the value of the Yorion itself is significant?
I think it's the having the companion in the companion zone basically is the big reason. It's not a very high downside. Most of the cards are all pretty good. And if you look at a classic 60-card blue-white deck, it's almost all 3-ofs. It's kind of deranged to me that they're not just playing the 4th card and then, slapping the companion in their companion zone. Omen of the Sea, also a huge, huge gain for the 80-card version. The 60-card versions have no real way to smooth until they hit 3 lands and can start casting Quick Study. So Omen of the Sea is really important. So yeah, I think that definitely it's better to have the 4/5, but even then, it's still not like a great matchup. I would say it's maybe, if I were to assign a number, I would say like 53-54% in Rakdos' favor.
Okay, that's pretty exact.
Yeah,
but
roughly exactly 53%.
Okay. Based on a lot of experience, obviously, so we'll mark that off as being a fairly reliable estimate, and we'll go ahead and look at Jonathan Hobbs's black-red mid-range deck. Probably, fairly stock, and a few cards maybe that. Well, actually, I take that back. I mean, I don't know if we can say there is a stock black-red deck anymore now that the Smuggler's Copters are in some of the decks.
Yeah, his Jonathan's sideboard is pretty punishing for this matchup because of those 2 Liliana the Veils. That's going to be a real beating.
Yeah, Liliana and 4 more discard spells to really put the pressure on Raja's deck. And also just, Go Blank is such a nice card. And, there isn't really much graveyard interaction in the blue-white deck, but there is Memory Deluge. And that can cripple kind of some of the late-game ferocity of the deck if you do actually lose 1 or 2 Memory Deluges into exile.
Yeah, absolutely. There is some conversation I've heard. Some people don't like bringing in Go Blank in this matchup.
Okay.
I personally like it. But
all right. Well, whether what other people think matters less than what Jonathan Hobbs thinks. So we'll find out how he decides to play it. Certainly some easy cuts here. I don't imagine all this removal is necessary, but he will figure things out. And it's not really a matter of figuring things out. This is a matchup where these players know what they're doing coming into the table, coming into the weekend. I'm sure Jonathan and Raja both knew exactly how they're going to sideboard in this matchup.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I would say probably a couple of these fatal pushes come out, maybe all four, the torch, the tower. And then it's kind of all, I guess the power would kill some number of those. Because there's 6 cards you definitely want to bring in.
So, okay, let me ask you this, more of just in general question. How often in a tournament match do you sit down for whatever round and then you are figuring out your sideboarding on the fly? You don't already basically know what your plan was going in. How often would you say that happens? 10% of the time, less than that? I mean, I'm sure it's not a big number, but
I would say I almost always think through the sideboarding, even if I end up sticking with my plan, just because sometimes things change if my opponent has like a weird card that I didn't really expect them to have, or if they played the matchup differently than I expected them to play it. So I would say I probably stick with my normal sideboarding upwards of around 80% of the time. And then, but like more than half the time, I'm like actively not second guessing, but like double checking my work basically, to see if I still want to go the same way that I normally do.
Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. All right, so let's see. Game 1, both players are on 6 cards. Raja comfortable with what he's got here. Jonathan going to throw his back. So yeah, I mean that sounds about right to me. And as far as following your pre-approved plan, and you do you go ahead and plug yourself. You do have you still run your Patreon where you are putting out. If people want to find that, if they want to have your advice on what the tech is, where do they find that from you?
Yeah, I do still have my Patreon, and I patreon.com/tittypills if you want to see my sideboard guide and my thoughts on various formats when they crop up.
Well, I'm sure people do. I mean, you have established yourself in the region, and not just in the region. I mean, I'm sure people everywhere know who you are at this point and have followed your exploits and know what's going on and are interested in your thoughts on variety of formats and decks. As we're underway here, Raja with a convenient plains indicator or I guess white mana indicator for his land there. And same start as last time for Jonathan. And that's a lot of land. Ooh. Raja Sulaiman, 5-line hand here. Quick Study and Wandering Emperor. The choice is probably going to reflect Jonathan's hand, but even though he's down a card, this isn't. He's probably not too unhappy to see that kind of assortment of cards.
Yeah, the notable NRG Champs competitor Dan Weiser says he keeps every single hand in this matchup basically, and just every single hand with blue-white. So this is a classic. There are 7 cards in my hand, and I'm going to keep situation from Raja.
Well, I can respect that. I have certainly had attitudes like that in the past. And here is the field on turn 2 to deny Jonathan a dual land here. Jonathan with a smile on his face. We'll see. I mean, I would say this probably very rarely would the Black Red deck actually run into mana troubles because of something like this, but you never know. How many basics?
Yeah, the only thing that could happen is getting Field of Ruin off of red mana. That's the main thing that would likely happen.
Yeah.
But with so many red sources, it's pretty unlikely.
All right, we'll see it. There are 2 swamps in Jonathan's deck, so even if he draws a second one, you're probably not heavily interested in throwing it into play. And here is that looks like a Mutavault to me. So okay, you called that. Maybe Jonathan is actually a little stuck on colored mana here, and all of a sudden Raja has found himself an advantage.
Yeah, I would always wait until land drop 3 to see if they're color screwed, because they might just have the slow land. But Raja with 6 Field of Ruin effects in his deck, we actually might start seeing some strip mining happening, especially with this Sunken Citadel powering those out for effectively just 1 mana.
All right, Void Shatter takes out the first Fable, and the second one looks like it's going to resolve, but the quick study will reload Raj's hand. And I mean, already seeing some merit to what you're saying, the idea of just keeping basically anything, as your deck will just function, and as long as you have some mana sources, it will come together. And we're seeing that already.
Question is Void Shatter the Bant charm of Pioneer?
Okay. I don't in the sense that it's versatile, or in the sense that one, a random card that Raja has in his deck for seemingly no reason. I suppose it's useful enough. I mean, it would be nice against the front half of the Kroxa, but there's a cost to playing that, right? I mean, we're giving up a Zorb, right? That's something real. All right. Well, if we get Raja,
I'm personally of the opinion that there should be no 3-mana counters in blue-white, but
okay.
If you're gonna play any, Void Shatter is the funniest one to play.
I will. Maybe that factored into Raja's deck building choices. What is going to get a laugh the most out of the viewers, out of the people at home? All right, we had here the chapter 2 from the Fable. And another Thoughtseize. There is a veto in Raja's hand. Could cast it here, although wouldn't deny him a 4-drop, I guess, for the turn, which are kind of where the heavy hitters come from. If we were to veto, considering it. And with the Field of Ruin in play, I mean, you did say maybe we'll see some strip mining. There are with the 2 basic lands in Jonathan's deck, so any additional land effects like that Rajan does draw will be able to just straight away kill lands. This is not a good hand. We're still flooded a little bit, which isn't shocking.
But again, this
given
this
how
is
he
again
started.
the benefit of having a 4/5 in your companion zone, because the best card Raja has access to right now is Yorion, but it's unthoughtseizable.
Unthoughtseizable on turn 8, which I guess Raja does have the lands to achieve, and it's the censor. Is it possible Hobbs takes the censor here? Because if he doesn't care about the veto and just strips the ability, yeah, wow, there you go.
Yeah, makes sense.
Blood Tithe Harvester comes in, and Jonathan sees an opening and is trying to press through as much damage as he can get.
Although, yeah, the Restless, whatever it is, Anchorage,
that's true.
Is holding back this Goblin token pretty powerfully. I really like Restless Anchorage in the blue deck.
3, that 3rd toughness is pretty significant. What do you get on that one? It's flying. When you attack, you get a map, or what do you get from there? It is.
Yeah, and the nice thing is with this Sunken Citadel, Raja could have both activated the Restless Anchorage, blocked, and then Field of Ruined one of the lands. Yeah, and here we are. Every Field of Ruin from now on is going to be a strip mine.
Yeah, and it does actually matter, as Johnson did have 2 creature lands in play, and now loses the Hive of the Eye turn. Mutavault's still there. And yeah, that's got to be kind of deflating for Jonathan, with the doors seemingly open for an attack there, but being held off by a creature land while Raja just sits there.
Raja still being at 20 life too means he has so much time.
Yeah, he really does.
You often get in these games with blue-white versus Rakdos where you start to stabilize, but then you're down to like 6, 4, even 2 life, and all of a sudden like a top deck stomp kills you, for example. Very, very stressful.
All right. So with a handful of land and Dovin's veto, what is Raja hoping here? Is there anything better than Memory Deluge off the top?
Yeah, I would say Temporary Lockdown wouldn't be terrible.
No, it would not.
Wandering Emperor would be really nice. Oh, actually, the best card off the top would be Dream Trawler.
Okay.
That card would just be absolutely devastating for Jonathan. With plenty of lands to discard to keep it hexproof.
Oh, Raja has a smile on his face. Let's see what he's got. if there's a dream trawler, at what point does this become a slow roll? When
Yeah, I guess the awkward thing about Dream Trawler is if he has plenty of extra cards.
Mm-hmm. It'd be Liliana, right? That would be the threat that would make him reconsider it. Okay, it is. Oh, Hall of Storm Giants comes into play tapped, and Jonathan uses the blood and discards Go Blank. Looking for some additional pressure, I suppose. That is a serious card that he's throwing away there. That's just not a random chaff extra land. Is that something you feel like at some point in the depth of the game you just decide, what addition, Raja has enough cards, discard 2 is just not worthwhile anymore?
Well, he does know that 2 of the cards in Raja's hand are lands that don't do anything, so
right.
I would say that's not a great use of the 3 mana.
Mm-hmm.
Now Jonathan willingly trading off one of his creatures to get some damage in finally.
Yeah, and it's going to be the Mutavault, it looks like.
Yeah, I love this choice by Raja. Get the land out of there so that Wraths later on are good draws.
Mm-hmm. Bone Crusher going to finish, or I'm sorry, Stomp going to finish off it's going to try, but it's going to fail. And that Dovin's Veto, which Jonathan knew about, and he has a second one. All right, so Jonathan expending all of his cards, but has cleared away Raja's board, sets him back a land, although he knows there are plenty extra. And empty-handed here, no threat of Liliana the Veil. And you called for...
I would just love to Vampiric Tutor a Wrath to the top of my library if I was in Raja's seat right now.
Yeah, a Wrath, a Dream Trawler. There were 2 Dream Trawlers in the deck, I believe. Raja with full information as to what Jonathan's got here. There's 1 Bone Crusher and Adventure. There are a couple creatures on the board. I guess the Reflection is actually going to go active this turn. That's not comforting, I'm sure.
Yeah, Raja's looking at a big hit next turn if he can't answer some of these creatures on board.
And a pass. Okay, so...
Notably, he is threatening to activate Hall of the Storm Giants as a blocker because of the Sunken Citadel.
Right, good call there, and that is significant. So, Jonathan going to bring out the Bone Crusher. And are we going to see a pass here? We are most definitely not. All right, Hall of Storm Giants.
Based on the facial expressions, didn't see this block coming.
Yeah, I mean that's unfortunate. That's a fairly significant loss there, losing Blood Tithe Harvester. Reflection, I believe, is active at this point. So the plan is to copy Bone Crusher and a turn, I guess, instead of copying Blood Tithe right there and sent it in. Or maybe I lost track of the turns, but I think it was active there. Anyway, Raja's Price to feel pretty good about himself. I mean, his lands are doing a lot of work here.
Yes, impressive showing for Sunken Citadel this match.
Mm-hmm. How's your feeling if you're playing against somebody that is deliberate like Raja, who really takes their time? Do you find yourself, because I'm sure some people get frustrated and some people are just content to have extra time to think and they're just relaxed and sitting there. What's your reaction in a situation like this?
It definitely depends somewhat on my own sort of mental headspace. But here's a nice end of turn, copy Bone Crusher, then copy it again on your turn for an attack through the big hall.
Right. Yeah, that is even with the real Bone Crusher getting picked off. This is what 10 coming across. I mean that's a lot, and shielded to follow it up. That's a really nice turn for Jonathan.
Yeah, exactly one draw step, and Yorion has not left the companion zone this entire match.
All right, this was After attacking into the hall, I wasn't feeling great about Jonathan's chances, but Raja continues to not really do any. Raja's not casting spells. That's not a good way to win. And there is 4 land in Ottawara, and Jonathan Hobbs will pick up Pioneer and pick up the match. Raja Sulaiman does not go back to back.
Congratulations to Hobbs for pulling off an impressive back against the wall victory. Needed to win basically 3 games in a row.
Yeah. And was able to do it. So Jonathan Hobbs will contest the finals. Raja Sulaiman, really impressive run though. Wins last year, top 4 this year, but will have to earn his way back in next year alongside everyone else. Jonathan